Breaking news from the stadium tonight as an anonymous fan foot the bill for 55,000 hot dogs, bringing that sweet tubed meat to everyone in attendance.
Free dogs! Yeah!
55,000 hot dogs? What does that even cost?
While the identity of this Frankfurter philanthropist remains anonymous, their all-beefy generosity will go down in history.
The new Mega Millions. More to win means more to give. How you spend it is up to you. Yeah!
For game odds and details, visit sceducationlottery.com.
He was an old soul dog. 2023, he was 6 years old, and he died unexpectedly on December 7th. It broke my heart wide open. It was devastating. It was worse than losing my parents. He was my co-pilot. He was my soul dog.
Roses to Rainbows, My Dog Gus and the Afterlife, my guest, Rebecca Shaper. I love the book. It gives, for anyone who's on a spiritual path and awakening and opening and learning more about their own abilities and how they connect, and you figure out eventually that we are all part of something much greater, and we are more than just the physical body. Our connections with pets can often be a doorway, a key, an awakening to, oh my gosh, a world that we hadn't been able to access, but with a pet, it's a slam dunk. Rebecca, I love the book, and you also had a previous book, so let's just get going. First, your background and a little bit about you.
Well, thank you, first of all, Wendy, for having me on your show. I'm absolutely looking forward to this conversation. So I'll give you a little bit of background. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, in a family that had mental health issues, sexual abuse. Both parents died by suicide. And at age 15, I knew all of this was happening for a reason. So fast forward, my brother, Call, was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Now, with that being said, I never felt his diagnosis was that. I felt like that he was hearing voices in different dimensions, but he did know how to channel them. And I do believe he did take on a lot of the trauma because he was extremely empathic. And for some reason, I felt like an angel was wrapped around me. And yes, there was a lot of trauma in my family, but for some reason, my brother Carl just could not take it. And he took off, probably had a year in college. And he was missing for 20 years. So I knew in my heart of hearts he was still alive. And I searched for him for so long, but I couldn't find him. But through a miracle, if you would like for me to explain how we found each other, Wendy, I'll be happy to go into that.
Yes, I think that's huge.
Okay. First of all, I'd love for your audience to know that when you have that intuitive feeling and you feel very strong about it, listen to it. And that's what I did throughout the 20 years because I always knew he was alive. So I found out he was actually 2.5 hours from where I am in Atlanta. He was in a place called Haven of Rest. And they take in people like my brother. And they have a thrift store next door to them. And what they do, they have the patients go and pick up furniture at people's homes. And they bring it back into the thrift store. And that's how they get their money. So my brother and another guy got in the truck because they had an order to go pick up some furniture at somebody's house. My brother got out of the car, went up to the door, knocked on the door, and got the furniture, got back into the truck, and he happened to look at the form, and he goes, wait a minute, to himself. He gets back out of the truck, walks back up to the door, knocks on the door, and the woman opens up the door, and he said, Marge, do you know who I am? I am Rebecca's brother. Marge is my husband's mother. She lived right outside of Anderson, South Carolina, and that's where my brother was. And she brought him, and she said, oh, my gosh, Carl, do you have any idea Rebecca has been looking for you for so long? So that morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, I'm usually never home. And they called me, and it was just the most incredible reunion. And ever since we united together, I took him in and got him with the mental health system in Greenville. He got an apartment. He did stuff with us, with our family. He was extremely intuitive, telepathic. We took him to the beach at our beach house, and he was just incredible. I wanted people to know that these people have a soul. They have a soul, and there's much more going on than the illness itself. If you have some type of experience like that, Wendy, I would love to hear it.
That was one of the reasons I was drawn to you to start out with when I got the information on your background, because my father was also diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic. And so it affected my childhood. I remember meeting him with my mom going out to the state hospital. At the time, he was there for a short stay. His mother was furious because she didn't want that to be part of his history. At the same time, that's what was really important because my mom was dealing with this. And as we got older, Mom would just say, Daddy's thinker doesn't work right. And that was a way of dealing with children who didn't understand why there were some interesting and potentially violent issues with our dad. Just the things he would say. So I made peace with this. And at one point I knew I could only have a short amount of time with my dad before he would flip, before something would shift. And when he died, there was an incredible, outside my house, I'm on the phone with my mom talking about his death, and she divorced when I was 8. Anyway, there was a rainbow. There was I could see a church steeple from the corner of my house, and there was a rainbow at the top of the steeple, and I knew I could not make it to where he was, which was a 5-hour drive, that he was there, that he was saying, it's okay, I'm here. Yep. So I knew that. Yep. Well, then this is what kind of an information about my dad. He said, as I'm standing in front, I remember exactly, the whole thing of where I was standing, the living room, the whole 9 yards. And he says, "Yeah, I just showed up to see how the other half lives." Okay.
Oh.
That's Dad. All right. And it isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just, that's his behavior, just a tad snarky. And so it's like, okay, Dad, gotcha. I know this is you. No one else could pull that off. But so I've had conversations with him about what was going on. And he said, and this is, I think, so helpful to know that, when we do these connections and we get a real strong hit of this is a confirmation. He was saying that the drugs that they put him on, which at that time were pretty heavy drugs. Yeah. So he's on these drugs, and Mom said, when he was on the drugs, he was lucid and you could talk to him. And he said his problem was that when he was on the drugs, he was a zombie. And so he wasn't really there. He was, manageable, and he looked normal and acted normal, but it wasn't him. And so that was one. And then the other thing he said was that you and your brother don't have the issues that I had. He said, I couldn't block the voices. He said, you have a filter and your brother has a filter, but I don't have that filter. And I couldn't. He said that actually the medication made it worse because then he had no filter to be able to stop them from talking. So there was that constant input from somewhere else that he could not divorce himself from. It was impossible. So I could understand the challenges he had throughout his life, even with the medication, because of that other presence. Then he was conflicted, and there's so that was information for me to understand the choices I made in order to go on with my life and accept that my dad has issues and I wasn't going to solve them.
Exactly, and you're exactly right, because the drugs flattened my brother out, and he was like a zombie. And I asked him, I said, do you hear male or female voices? Are they good? Are they bad? And I asked him, I said, how come you decided to come off the streets and get some type of help? And he said, and I also asked him, I said, do other homeless people want to get help and reach out for help? He told me, he said, Rebecca, some just don't want to get off the streets. They want to be where they are because I think they're very uncomfortable. I think they're very empathic, and they pick up so much energy and frequency, and it's overwhelming for them. I do feel that there are some chemical imbalance in some people, but I also feel that they tap into other dimensions with these voices. Just like my mother, she was diagnosed the same way. And I just think it's just something that they're still studying and researching on. And there is validity to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, and I've been screaming about this for almost 20 years. But it's good to hear your perspective and hear what your insight is. And you have to go on and live your life and do the best you can do and support them and love them as much as you can. But, you can't let it take over your life as well.
In terms of other dimensions and what they're tapping into, there was a guy I know, his name is David Franklin Farkas. He worked at a mental institution, psychiatric ward, and he said when he was able to see a being, an entity standing at the corner of the hall, and he addressed him, and the guy said, "Whoa, you can see me?" Well, yeah. And he said that the doctors couldn't see him. The patients could, the entity. And so there's one instance. There's another who was a friend that I knew, and she liked to go to the boats to gamble. And he had a really difficult time going with her because what happened then was he would see entities hanging around people. And it was very disturbing because he could see these entities attached to people. And for him, it was like, I don't want to go. But she had him accompany her. And that was one of his experiences that, he knew that what he was seeing was real to him and nobody else seemed to pick up on it. And that was also depressing because of his reality.
Of course it is. Yes, definitely. And, some people would probably think, gosh, am I insane? What's going on with me? But I definitely, in my own experience, seeing my mother and seeing my brother and also seeing other individuals, there is something to this. There definitely is. And I definitely believe that they do tap into different dimensions and they see entities. And I'm sure you've probably heard about telepathy talks to autism kids.
Yeah.
There's another prime example. There's so much that we can learn. And I believe it's just being aware and having that yearning to learn more, to expand yourself with this type of knowledge.
With your book, this one about Gus is a key. It's a doorway. It's saying that, this is one way that we can expand our awareness, communication with animals and learning that component. I've had it with all of my animals. So I was really glad to see you basically take people through the process of what happens. Let's get into, and again, the book is Roses to Rainbow, My Dog Gus in the Afterlife. And Gus is those eyes, there are pictures in the book and his eyes are so, you just immediately feel like he's a person.
Yes, and he was an old soul dog. 2023, he was 6 years old, and he died unexpectedly on December 7th. It broke my heart wide open. It was devastating. It was worse than losing my parents. He was my co-pilot. He was my soul dog. We understood each other telepathically. We didn't have to say anything. We just knew where each other wanted or knew each other's frequency. We knew each other's energy, and we loved to do adventures at the beach. We have a beach house as well. And the reason why I titled the book Roses to Rainbows is we were walking on the beach one day, and there was a rose sticking up out of the sand. Who would have thought a rose be sticking up out of the sand? And our beach is pretty pristine. And he goes over and looks at it, and then he smells it. Well, it was the day of my birthday. And then when we would go do adventures on the beach, we'd always see rainbows. I mean, it was just, I had so many pictures of Gus and I seeing rainbows, but he was my co-pilot for sure. He was an incredible dog. And how we got him is quite an interesting story.
Yeah, it was unplanned. It was unplanned.
Yes. We were dogless for 7 years, and my oldest daughter, who is the animal whisperer, she called us and said, Mom and Dad, you have got to get this dog. And Jim and I are like, that's my husband's name. We're like, what? Yes, you have got to get this dog. We are sitting in our backyard on the chairs. And she said, look, he was on Facebook. And she said, look at him. You've got 10 minutes to make this decision. And we're like, oh, my God, wait a minute. We got 10 minutes. She said, yes, you've got to get this dog. So we bit the bullet, and it was the best decision we ever made. He was shipped from Hungary, and we got him in August, and it was the best decision, like I said, we ever made, and it was the most horrific, worst nightmare when he died unexpectedly on December 7th. And he was only 6. He was happy-go-lucky that morning with my daughter's dog. They were playing together. They were having so much fun. And I took him in the car. We went on a car ride to go run an errand. He jumps out of the car, and he just sits there. And I knew immediately something wasn't right. And he ended up having a tumor on his spleen, and it bursted. The grief that I went through was just unbelievable. And, they say grief is the great transformer. It can be devastating, it can be heartbreaking, and overwhelming. And for me, it was extremely painful. I've never felt pain like that. And I can just say, from my experience, trust me, it has cracked my heart wide open to another level, and with also a new strength and a deeper level also on how to live. I felt it was up to me on how I could use this to help others through my experience. It was very challenging times. It was not fun. It was not fun, the grief of over 8 months. But I knew that Gus was saying, you need to do this book. Every situation that I've been involved in, it's been a calling, and I listen to that call, and I make it happen, and I love it that I trust the process, and people walk into my life to make it happen for me. I can tell your audience, here's 3 great examples. I didn't know what I was doing on doing the documentary. I had no idea how to do it. I felt nothing, but I trusted it. And people came into my life, and it took 14 years. Then fast forward 2015, the book about my brother. I'm not a writer. I had no clue how to self-publish, nothing. But it was another soul calling, and people came into my life. And fast forward, now this book about Gus. So I would love for your audience to take away, if they feel this intense feeling and nudge, like a nudge or a push, that this is something you need to do, my suggestion from my experience is you need to listen to that, because that's part of your purpose in life. We're here to help serve others through our experiences. And sometimes the universe will course correct you. From my experience, I trusted the process. It wasn't easy at times. It was not easy because I can be very stubborn sometimes, but I'm getting a lot better at that. So I would just love for your audience to take away that, hey, maybe I should do this. I'm seeing these synchronicities. I'm seeing I've got this download. It's just all of a sudden this download that comes from nowhere. And you're like, what's that all about it? So, yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Well, there are some very uniquely supernatural events that happen during this time. When you're getting those little hints, those little cues, those clues. The birds are a big thing, but you also connected with a spirit communicator, animal communicator, and you can share that. That Sunny helped you, I think, a lot, at least establish the connection.
Yes. In January, when Gus passed away in December 2023, January, I knew I had to do something to help me with this grief. I wanted to connect with him. So through synchronicity, Sunny Man, who is an animal communicator, lives in Australia, and I reached out to her. We had 10 different sessions, and it was just incredible. She would communicate to Gus, and Gus would communicate to her, and then she would transcribe the messages. And then I would relate my comments from my journals on what was going on. So it's a three-way conversation between Sunny Man, Gus, and myself. And I learned a lot, definitely learned a lot. And also I knew in my heart of hearts that Gus would reincarnate. I had to back off because I didn't want to force it. And I kept asking her, is he going to reincarnate? And he would say, yes, why wouldn't I? And would come back. I'm your boy. And we would always call him the boy. And there's incidents in the book where there's one where she said, Rebecca, Gus is saying, hi, Beck. And Beck, B-E-C-K, is what my brother would call me. So there's no way that she would know that my brother would call me Beck. So to me, that was a way of Gus saying, hey, I'm really here. And I want to communicate to you, Sonny, to give the information to my mom. And it helped the grieving process, and also made it worse at times as well, because I wanted him in the physical.
Even when we know that someone's going to die, death is that's part of life. Okay, that's going to happen. And when you have a pet who is slowly declining, and every moment is precious, it's I don't think it's any easier than when you have one that dies suddenly, because all of a sudden, one way or the other, it is a shock to your system, especially when you're bonded. Yeah. And with that, knowing that, okay, this has to happen, but the pain, the physical pain of grief, which everybody thinks you should be over, and why it's just a pet, all of that, it makes it so hard to, in the way society expects, to transcend that grief, to get over it, to clear it, because other people expect that it shouldn't be that difficult. And you realize for some people it's excruciating. And I think this is a way of saying, look, this isn't unnatural or abnormal. It's what happens when we are empathic and we have compassion for animals. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It makes sense. Absolutely. And when you can communicate with your animal, and they bring in so much joy and laughter and unconditional love. And when that void is gone, it's not fun. It's not fun because they're part of your family. And perhaps there are people in life that's where they are. Some people come and say, well, why don't you get another pet? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, no, I need to grieve. I need to grieve. And then there's that part, too, that when the person grieves so much, and then if they decide to get another dog, which we did, which was very interesting how we got Zeke, there's that guilt part. Am I going to love this other dog as much as I loved Gus? I think it's just where you are in your life and your awareness. And my hope for people is that they just open their hearts up more and become more aware, because they want to communicate with us. There's illustrations in my book that shows this. And I'm very honest, I have high integrity. I'm not some person that is everything is woo-woo. These are my experience, and this is my truth, and I want to share it with people who go through what I've gone through, but yet there is hope on the other side.
But let's bring your shamanic experiences in here too, because as this was happening, you were also being encouraged both by Sunny and by Gus, and in your own sense of purpose, and you were following that at the same time. And it seemed to me that this was a powerful enhancement, a powerful assist from the other realm to say, you're not done. And this is part of your journey. And it was incredibly informative as you were dealing with this, because other people who are in shamanic development, they also learn how to deal with the other side. And I'm just saying the other side, there's multiple dimensions. So we'll just leave it at that. How's that?
Yeah. Yeah, that could be in a whole different conversation.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a question, or you want me to
share that part too? Because I think that's another element to the story that says, life didn't just stop. You weren't just totally consumed, even though the grief was there. You were still on this journey, and it played into it because it, I think, gave you a little bit more proof that these other dimensions exist. Because for one, you're dealing with Gus right there front and center saying, hey, I'm not dead. Dude, come on. Get with the program. Yeah. Okay. So, and in shamanism, that's one of the things that's important to know, that there are other dimensions and other beings that we connect with.
Oh, absolutely. And nature is the biggest thing. It goes way back into the ancestors, and there's healing techniques, there's ceremonies, and we communicate with nature in the spiritual world to maintain a balance between the three levels of the world. Like we call it the Ukapacha and the Kai Pacha and the Hana Pacha, which is the upper world, which I have a tendency to really gravitate towards there. But my dog, Gus, here's what I can't remember if I started it before he died or after he died. But it was a workshop, a year-long workshop with the Peruvian shamans in Peru. They are from the last Apache family lineage, and they wanted to get their messages out from the ancestors, and that's always intrigued me. And during the process of the transitions and Sonny talking to Gus and then my own journaling, he was pushing me on the other side. He said, Mom, you need to do this. Come on. And he said, you need to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, no, I'm not getting up at 5. I'm an early riser. But even the journeys, the initiations that I had were quite remarkable. They do it remotely, and there's like 4 different initiations, and he was always there with me. And how I can describe that, he communicates through other animals. They can soul dog another animal. I mean, they can put themselves in other animals. And here's a wonderful example. I remember my first initiation, and I had to lay down out in nature and close my eyes, and then the shaman would do it remotely and build a ceremony. And right at the beginning, this hawk flew right in front of me. And I'm very in tune with animal spirit guides, and hawk is one of them. And I knew that was like Gus confirming, hey, here we go. And then when the ceremony was over, when the initiation was over, the hawk flew in the opposite direction right in front of me. It was just so synchronized. And that's my experience. I know that was him tuned into me. And I have experience with eagles too. And I can only speak from my experience, and Gus, really pushing me on the other side. And I've completed it. And, there's still so much to learn with this, but I feel like in a way I'm honoring him. And this is what he wants me to do, to speak for other animals through this book and help others be more aware of how in tune we can be with nature. And they want to talk to us. To me, it's just so natural. But I can see where others are like, what do? You communicate with trees? You communicate with, animals or other animals? Yes.
Yeah.
It's something that until an individual experiences it, it's really hard to explain. But my joy and my passion is to help open up people's hearts. We're all here together. Everything in the universe. We're all one. And it's just a matter of communicating, opening up, and seeing what's out there, what's available. They want to communicate. I just kind of have a loss of words because there's so much I'd like to say, but I hope I articulated that in a way that resonates with people.
When you go through this book, you're asking multiple times, when? You're coming back. Okay, when? And then Gus actually comes through and saying, control. This isn't about control, and trust, and it's okay, and you're all right. You're here. You're learning. Stop trying to make it something and project. That message is very clear, and it comes through frequently in these conversations with Gus to kind of, do your work.
Yes. Yes. And you know what? Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because I found myself forcing it. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute, Rebecca, you have to back off. Just back off. You've already said in your mind what you would love to happen. And if it's meant to be, it will be. And let go and trust. And once I finally did that, because I was still grieving so much at that time, and once I finally let go of that and just said, okay, I just need to allow and trust the process, then it was quite interesting how we ended up with Zeke from Hungary, from the same breeder. He has his own personality, but I can see a lot of Gus in his personality as well.
When Gus came along, you decided, no, it's a lot of investment, a lot of years to have a pet. Could be 20 years. This might be a big thing. Then your daughter said, you know what? Here, the perfect dog. And then you ended up with Gus. Well, here's another perfect dog scenario where you kind of had a clue. I mean, you saw at one point there were two maybe little wisps of fog of something that flew across your frame of vision, and you said, I think those are the two dogs that were. And so you were connected. You were connected on a different wavelength with that breeder and her dogs. That's what I saw in that, was that there's a link that's still there.
Yes, you're exactly right. And all the synchronicity that led up to it. And we got Zeke the day my mother died by suicide on December 4th. And it was 3 days prior to Gus's death. We got Zeke in 2024. And I can see how Gus soul dogs him at times, but I also feel like that they're brothers and they're here to protect me. Gus was my protector, and Zeke is on like a whole different level. I mean, it's quite interesting, but yeah, and he's got his own personality, which we absolutely love, and I just feel so grateful for it all. And I still miss Gus. When you have that dog, you know that you can never forget. He's always there with you. Yeah. And one thing that I'd like for your audience to know that Gus did say in the book, it's not the quantity of time, it's the quality of time that they spend here with you in the afterlife, in the physical life. And I found out that we had a lot of lives together, which makes so much sense.
I had a special dog too, and I did not intend on getting a dog. But there was an opportunity, and they needed somebody, like just a short temporary home. And this dog had already been through 5 short temporary homes. But here I'm thinking, okay, fine. I can help. I can be the good person here and take the dog.
I can do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Max knew that I was his project. I did not know this. Max knew this. He ran away, I think, about 7 days after I had him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to work with this dog. And there was some other stuff. I'm just making it real short. And I'm thinking, well, he ran off and there's no way for me to, okay, I guess that's done. And I had a sense that there was more to this. And when he came walking down the sidewalk and he told me telepathically, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get out. I couldn't get back in. And I'm like, oh, apparently he went after a squirrel. And he got out under the fence,
Yes.
couldn't come back in, and a neighbor had been obviously taking care of him because, and naturally he escaped. He was an escape artist, but he was my guardian, and he was my soul partner, and he was extraordinary. And he was a German Shepherd, Max, well trained. He had to be separated from his family because she got cancer, and they had to go back to Australia for health care. So everybody else was treating him like a dog. And I knew when they brought him over to my house, a woman and her two children, they said the children were allergic, but he'd also gone through somebody else's back porch because he was afraid of lightning and thunder, and did about $2,000 worth of property damage to the neighbor. And so it was like, there was more to that story. And,
oh boy.
Yeah. So, but I also
he
knew
was really making your way to you for sure.
he was like, okay, can't go back. And so I took him, I said, okay, let me take him for a little walk. When I took him up the street, I told him to sit. And he sat immediately. The dog was trained. Wow. They didn't know it. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, he was trained, and he very well trained, and his people had taken extremely good care of him. So, but he was supposed to be with me, and that was the whole thing, because they kept saying, the guides that I had kept saying, the other is coming. The other is coming. I didn't know they meant a dog. I thought the other is coming. So I'm thinking, who is this person coming into my life? What am I supposed to be looking for? And Max shows up. But when he says, I'm sorry, I couldn't get back in. And I was like, oh, okay, you're my project.
I just had this visual of his head down, moping. I'm so sorry.
It was an unforced error. I didn't mean to make such a bad impression in our first week.
But he's in the afterlife.
Oh, yes. He told me when he crossed, he said he needed to be here through a certain date. His health was failing. I would have to clean up after him in the middle of the night. He was here as long as he possibly could be, and he was a German Shepherd. He was about 12 or 13 when he passed, but he said, I need to be here. And he was there for me when someone came into my house, and I had a younger dog that he was basically mentoring at the time. And that was why he was supposed to be there, as a protection. And he knew it. He was an extraordinary connection and a very, very big part of me learning about connecting with animals, not just dogs. I had a cat that was very similar that gave me information, and just that way of knowing that we have these connections that we don't often pay attention to, because in some ways they're so subtle, and it's also unconventional. You're not supposed to be paying more attention to animals than you are to people. So, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. It does matter.
It does matter. And that was his teaching lesson to you.
Yeah. And
knowing. To teach you. Yeah, and knowing.
His soul, when I was there for him, because he had to have an assist, and that's never easy. But he had said he was ready to go. He couldn't play with the other dog anymore because he was losing basically his function. So, but at that point, I said, you have to tell me. You have to let me know you're okay. And so as I held him, I felt his soul go right through my head, through my forehead. I felt this whoosh of energy go through me, and it was like a fast, and I'm like, well, that was quick, just swoosh, gone. And then for the next couple of weeks, he would bark to let the other dog in at the back door. I thought she had learned how to bark to let herself in. She never did that. From then on, she scratched at the back door. He was there to let her make sure she was taken care of, and he went to visit my mom. And Mom heard, right basically outside her bedroom door, a dog bark. The two cats went, shoot, bolted. They were gone because they heard the dog too. And that was Max saying, hey, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Oh my gosh, I got goosebumps. Didn't that just warm your heart?
Yes. It isn't easy. I mean, there's still that grieving process of there's a very void, a huge void. But you also know that they did everything, and they did everything. They completed their their journey, their project.
Exactly.
I was the project, I'm sure he got gold stars because I was difficult.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah. Well, some of us are slow. And it took a
Listen,
while.
I understand. I get it. I understand. Oh my gosh, I love that story. That's just so beautiful. And what a testimony that you're saying right now that, hey, this is what you experience, and it's your truth.
Yeah.
And how can people? I don't understand how people don't understand that, but that's not for
that's
me.
okay. I didn't
It's
know it
okay.
until,
Yes.
I mean, this was my
It's
experience. I didn't want a dog. And I ended up with a dog. And then not only that, a dog who was smart, really, really smart.
Yeah. And the dog that would communicate with you as well.
And
So Max was saying, listen,
mhm.
you need this dog. And this is what we can do. So he convinced you for sure.
Yeah, he was the teacher, and that's what we don't expect. That our animals are actually higher intelligence. They know things we don't, and he was my eyes and ears for things that I couldn't. Like I said, someone came into the house, he was there. That was his purpose. He wanted to stay until that time, and then his job was done. And when the other dog, she was old enough that she was playing too rough, and I couldn't protect him, and he knew it. I mean, it was. They have a time, they have an out time that they have to go, and my cats have done the same thing. One of them said, "You have to stop grieving. I can't go forward as long as you're on." Like he was saying, it's like a phone line, and I kept calling him on the phone and not hanging up, and he's like, "This, I love you. I can't stay. I have to go, and you are going to heal." And I was like, well, but when he described it, it was described as a phone line that I kept calling and not hanging up. I kept, keeping that open line.
I love that.
Yeah. And he said, I have to go. And just gently. And then 2 kittens came into my life, and they were a bonded pair. And I remember watching them play and missing him desperately because they were playing, they had each other, and I had no one. I mean, not the same.
Yeah, I know.
And at the same time, they were wonderful too, and we grew into a wonderful pattern. But every single being we connect with is unique, and they teach us so much.
Yes.
All of them teach us. If it's short or long, they teach us.
Absolutely. I am so glad you're saying that, and I validate so much what you're saying because it is so true because of the experiences that we have gone through.
Yeah.
We've had confirmation after confirmation, and it has broadened my awareness, and it sounds like it has definitely broadened your awareness to possibly, who knows, have another animal. I don't know. There's Zeke. See, he's communicating right now.
Yeah.
He's like, yes.
That was an exclamation.
To
Thank you, Zeke. Thank you.
See, that could have been a Gus, Soul Dog, and Zeke right there.
Well, okay. It's the thing you also, in terms of dealing with animal communicators, because I do believe this is a very helpful, because sometimes we hear something at the very right moment that helps us affirm. And there you go. And affirm. And you also checked in with Stephen Farmer, another communicator, shaman type person who said, this is what you need to do. And these are things that are playing out. So you weren't just going down one path and being hooked on one piece of information as your validation. You branched out and you continue to grow and learn and expand. And that's huge.
Yes. I'm not in this tight bubble. I love to learn. I love to expand. I love to learn other people's knowledge, incorporate it in how I feel like I should incorporate it intuitively. So, yes, I'm not, I love to learn. Basically, I love to learn from other people. And he was Dr. Farmer was extremely helpful. And I still talk to him a good bit periodically. And he's been a great mentor for me as well.
He does the animal books, and so if you're looking for the definition of how an animal can help you, whether it's an owl or whether it's a butterfly, a horse, my instructor with that was Ted Andrews. Animal Speaks is a book.
Yes.
And then Jamie
Yep.
Sams and David Carson, I believe that's the two that have the other books that I gravitated toward when I was first learning to pay attention to animals and spirit guides and that kind of stuff. So, these are ways that we can learn from others who have had these very unique and organic encounters with beings. And it can be any kind of being. I mean, fairies, the whole 9 yards. It's
Yes,
a wide
yes.
open universe. And I love the pictures you put in your book because we develop a relationship with Gus, but we also see some of the supernatural elements like the heart you found on the fire stones.
That's so interesting you said that, because I was just sitting here thinking about that, as a matter of fact.
Mhm.
And clouds. It's people, I love looking at the images and the beings in the clouds. And
And the
You know,
fire,
there's
the
so much-
fire, the
Yeah,
shapes in the
yeah.
fire. Yeah.
oh, yeah. That was when we were in Africa, and that was interesting as well. So wherever you are, there they are, want to communicate, correct?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The signs, the numerology makes perfect sense. I also look at those signs, the repeating number signs. And each person, though, has to determine, all right, what is my interpretation? How does this fit me? How does this speak to me? Because even when we learn from others, sometimes it's their process, their recipe. And each of us has our own internal guidance system, our core that says, all right, this is what I have learned from that. And so we take from whatever in our environment calls to us, and then we develop our own guidance system of how to navigate that. And that's what you bring to people's attention when you document your process. I think you were kind of, not really sure that you wanted to put this in the book, and is this really the way you wanted to go? But it's so helpful. It's so helpful, especially when people are grieving.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. I felt like that illustrations would be more of a confirmation that, I'm just not some person making all this up. I definitely agree with you. There's so much information out there that we could learn from nature. To me, nature's the source. And it helped me with my grieving as well, because I would always go out in nature, and I can just take a deep breath and just be grateful and thankful for everything that in my life. I wouldn't be able to share these experiences. That's the way I look at it.
There's a picture you have of the fire, the flames that you saw in the African campfire. What I think is interesting is I think the one is a picture of Gus. And Gus seems to have a little brother in those flames. Because there's the one that's taller, and that's Gus as the adult. And then there's a little one that comes in, and it's right beside Gus. And I just think,
Oh, that's interesting. I love that interpretation. That's interesting because, you talk about everybody has their own interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And mine was because it was the Messiah boy that was doing it. And Messiah, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. But I love taking pictures. This is another thing people can do, take pictures of flames, because you can see things in the flames that you can't see in the naked eye. And I thought it had something to do with the ancestors on the land where we were.
Yeah.
But I love your interpretation. That makes so much sense. So thank you for that. Oh,
Well,
I
I
love
just-
that.
I
I got
just
to go
thought-
back and look at it again.
I thought it relates to you, and you bring your stuff to the equation, and everybody will see this differently. Okay, this isn't the be all end all the truth. This is my interpretation, my insight, my way of viewing it. So before we get caught up in that's the right way. No. That's why it's so important to take this information and make it yours and make it sing for you. Okay, and that's what the book is for. Yes.
Exactly. That's what the book is for. And it's okay, whatever process you decide you want to go. Don't let anybody say, oh, don't do that. You don't know what you're talking about. No, it's just something you feel, and this is the way you see it, and you process it within yourself, and you know intuitively and listen to your body at the same time. If your body is saying yes, there you go. Go for it. Don't be afraid. Don't be embarrassed. Don't feel like you're being judged. Just go for it.
I heard that. I heard that little ting.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's enthusiasm.
I didn't do that.
Enthusiasm.
Yes. Yes.
Well, and the deal is, some of it, again, back to it being subtle. You talk about there were certain times when you felt Gus, and you felt somebody walk in the room, or just that presence, and those are things that sometimes people discount because, well, I didn't see it. Could I have felt it? I must have made it up. Those things are real. I've had people who talk about, well, the cat came and sat on the bed. The cat is deceased, but the bed still felt like the cat jumped up, and that's real. That's real. And what Gus was trying to tell you is, I'm not dead. I'm not gone. I'm still here. And you need to open up to understand and be able to connect to that.
Exactly. And even like a nudge, if you feel like a soft nudge,
Mm-hmm.
like I have felt that as well. And if you're somewhere and you hear this bark, and it's a very familiar, like what happened with you, a familiar bark from your dog, that's another way of communication. Their favorite toy shows up somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's all kinds of ways that they want. Songs was the biggest over the rainbow.
Yeah.
That song would come on at the most profound times for me. I would go back in my bathroom because I love music, and I'd turn on the radio, and it was times when I was just really mourning and in grief. And that song "Over the Rainbow" by is that what it is?
Yeah,
Iz.
I said that somebody Israel,
That's right.
comma,
You're
well,
right.
and I can't do the last name. It'll take me a while to work my way through that. So
Yeah,
let's just go is.
That's why. Forget. Yeah, no. I would really tear it up.
Yeah,
But yeah, and that songs, they come to you through songs. Even their songs that come on the radio that were in the documentary. And when my brother's deceased,
mm-hmm.
we would play music in his ears. Those songs would come up. So I'm just sometimes speechless about this because there's so much to say about it. And I just hope that we are bringing more awareness to the audience, to people, because it'll bring a whole different level of joy within and peace within.
It's a good start. And I was going to ask you again about your brother, if this did help you connect even more with your brother. And I mean, the trauma you had early in your life with losing your parents, and the ways that all of these people transitioned, very abrupt, very, difficult and challenging. And yet at the same time, it's a pattern. It's a pattern you have been able to flow through.
I have been guided. I've been guided through angels. I've been guided through spirits. Guides. I've been guided through nature. And I have an incredible family that has been very supportive with all of this as well. And I do know, I will say this, that when Gus passed away unexpectedly, I've never cried so much in my life. And I think part of his gift to me when he left was for me to go through more grieving process of my parents and possibly the way I grew up.
I think
because
so.
I really didn't.
I want to do your website,
Yeah.
because you say there's going to be some changes to your website. For right now, it's RebeccaShaper.com, and then the book available on Amazon. But that's the website, and you'll add the current book about the dog too. But how do people connect with you?
Well, they can connect with me through author at RebeccaShaper.com. And I would love, if anybody has any questions, anything that's on their mind they would like to ask or say, please, I would love to hear. I would love to hear all about it, because we're not in this alone. And we need support from each other. And it's so refreshing to hear your story, Wendy, and hear your phenomenal insights on everything. I think you're an extremely gifted person.
Well, okay, I'll take the compliment, but I will also say that I've learned a lot. And I'm still
Yes,
learning.
but
Still learning.
But we're still learning. But here's the thing: you made the choice to activate on it. You made the choice. You made the choice to say, "Okay, this is what I'm learning, and how am I going to use this?" You made that choice. Some people don't do that. Some people, and that's okay. That's just where they are. They don't want to move forward with it. So I find you extremely gifted, and I'm just honored to be on the call with you, to be honest.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I do know that when somebody's reading your book and they see the constant thing of, it's okay, you're all right. Don't try to control everything, because no matter what you think, it's beyond your control, and it might be even better than you can imagine. So let's put that out there, that if you are struggling, if you are interested, you are curious, there are always unique ways that the supernatural elements, angels, guardians, pets, can open doors for you. How's that?
I love it, and so true. And thank you for saying that, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I have learned a lot from you. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
To me, nature's the source, and it helped me with my grieving as well, because I would always go out in nature, and I can just take a deep breath and just be grateful and thankful for everything that in my life.
Having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
This is your before and after story. Instead of imagining a rewarding career in medical imaging, Southeastern College can actually take you there. Prepare for a career in ultrasound, radiology, and X-ray technology. With hands-on specialized training, simulations, and real-life experience with the latest imaging technology, you'll be ready to play a vital role on any healthcare team. Transform your life by helping others. Southeastern College. Your future is bright. Visit scc.edu to get started.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.